are one of the most important things to notice in your life.
How do you know what is the truest one?
Wisdom is found in the counsel of people. The practice is important, but it's about the principle. Why did you do the practice? Most situations are just multi-layered.
Welcome back to another episode of the New Rules Podcast. It's your girl, Breezy. And we are starting the podcast today with some very sad news. You have the honor.
Wow, I wonder if our producer will actually put, that slow, just slow music in the background.
Like doom sounds.
Yeah. So, well, guys, as you know, Lauren, our incredible producer, who's been with us now for well over a year, who's helped New Rules Podcast, I think, take off and do some incredible things, is leaving us.
Boo!
No, it is when Lauren first came on to actually to do this. It was really to be for a year, but it was extended, and she's added so much value. I mean, it's helped us tremendously in just kind of in the content being produced and really getting our messaging out there. And so, so she's going on to the next phase and next steps of her life. And so she doesn't know what all that fully looks like yet. And so we will give you an update once she knows fully what that all looks like. But we say all that to say is that we are looking for someone to actually be a producer of the podcast and some other things within our organization. So if you know anyone, or if that's something that you are actually interested in doing, make sure.
Love for it to be somebody who's already part of the New Rules family.
Yes, absolutely. So who do they need to reach out to?
You can DM us on Instagram or email info@newrulescollective.com.
There we go. info@newrulescollective.com. But again, this is one of the things about the organization that we lead is that we talk about people walking their meaningful work, purpose, authenticity. And so we know that as we're here, there'll be some that'll be here for a long time. There'll be others that actually get sent out to go do different things. And so Lauren's just another one of those people that are going to go to the next phase of her life. And so we're super excited about what's going to happen, what that's going to look like for her. And again, she's always a part of the New Rules family.
Is there anything you would like to say to the people?
Should I say nice to the people?
She said, should I say something to the people?
I love working here. I love being part of this team. If somebody was already hired, I'd be like, this is freaking hard and you're going to be so much better for it.
That's true. It's hard to work here, and you will be a better person because of it.
Absolutely. And that is a real statement she made. This is not for the faint of heart to work here, because not only do we challenge you to be great at your job, but also we challenge you to be a great human. And so in that process, those are two things. Sometimes people challenge you to be great at your job. They could care less. You can just be a crappy human. Don't have to grow. Don't have to develop. But here, we believe and we understand that the importance of human beings actually being better. And so a lot of that's going back, that's looking at stuff, that's pushing on things that maybe have been patterns in your life. And because we know that if you can integrate those things, your work will be better. And here's the thing, it's not just about your work being better. You'll be better at home. You'll be better with your friendships and your relationships, which is incredibly important to us because I believe as people are better in those other areas, they're gonna naturally be better at work. And I think that is one of the biggest responsibilities I think organizations do not get is organizations are responsible for, I believe, making humanity better. And I think one of the ways you make humanity better is you make your workforce better. And so that's it. And that doesn't mean making them better. It doesn't mean giving them different kind of just perks and things like that. It's actually helping them grow and putting them in positions to be able to do that. So, yeah. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know.
Give us a call. So right now it's December and everybody's getting ready to walk into January, which usually comes with all of the things like New Year's resolution. How do I become the person that I've always wanted to become within the next 2 weeks?
Yep.
But I think something that we skip over so frequently when we're looking to create goals or go into the new year or evolve is we don't necessarily reflect in the measure that we could in order to truly transform and change. And so that's something that we want to talk about today. I think it's something that you do an incredible job at and that we even as an organization do a really good job at. Yep. So I think there's just a ton of wisdom that you have that our listeners might need as they're going into the new year.
Yeah. No, I think reflection is a really important thing. And I think when it comes to like reflection of the year, reflection, it could be just, as you're starting to, to grow, reflection on maybe your marriage, reflection on your relationship, reflection on your job, whatever. I think one of the most important things is that it actually takes an internal fortitude to actually do that. Because a lot of times, when you reflect on stuff, either you're going to, a lot of times, like, we want to stay away from things that may be difficult because, maybe it's something you did and it was like embarrassing, or, man, you just feel like, man, I'm just so bad. And, that feeling you have when you do something embarrassing or there's shame that's there, like, that you don't even want to, like, rethink about that. It's like you cringe at it. But actually, it's those things, those moments to where the fortitude allows you to actually go and to excavate. Because I think underneath those things, there's so many lessons to learn. And again, not only even bad stuff, even good stuff. I think one of the things we do a really bad job of as human beings sometimes is celebrating and then going back and reflecting, why did that go so well? And like, we don't go back to those things. And I think reflection is an incredible thing, because I do believe, and we can talk more about this, everybody talks about, like, your past predicts your future. And I believe in this idea of, really, it's a paradox, because I actually believe that there is a predictive past, but it's the stuff that goes unaddressed that actually ends up being your future. And so I think that's kind of that stuff like that. I want to ask you that question. So again, as you've been around, you've been here, was something reflecting on things, was that something you've always done, even before you ever got here and being a part of what we've done, when you were younger, or has it been something that's a lot newer for you?
When I first started here, no, I feel like I didn't necessarily think at all, for a number of different reasons. So I feel like it was a new practice. Mm-hmm. But for me, where it started, I spent a lot more time, I think, thinking about the present first, because I wasn't thinking at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. It makes absolutely complete sense.
So when you say that, in terms of, I guess people say that your past predicts your future, I don't think that I've ever heard that before.
Really?
Yeah.
No. I mean, people talk about it a lot. They say when you study history, right, like history repeats itself. And then they'll just, and people talk about, oh man, you can look at people's patterns. Like, yep, you look at their past, it's going to predict their future. And I think there's this idea, you hear me say it all day, don't bet against consistent behavior, right? It's undefeated, because what you've done here, a lot of times you keep those same habits and rituals, you'll do it there. Mm-hmm. And so I do believe that things that go unaddressed, good or bad, actually will continue to happen, because it's just habit. It's like, it's just motion in one direction. And until you put something new there, it'll still head in that same direction. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is what, when people talk about that idea of that, and that's why, you look at somebody and you see, oh, I can tell what's going to happen, because they've done nothing different that's going to dictate them changing the course. So it may be a different scenario, it may be a different environment, it may be a new city, but the same patterns will come out.
Mm-hmm. At what point did you start reflecting?
I think I've always, for whatever reason, have always done that. And some of it could be the fact I'm a coach's kid, and I watched, just in bed in my house, you watch film, right? My dad I used to remember him from the time I was 4 or 5 years old. Like, my dad, old VHS tapes, he's in there, like, had a game the night before, he's watching film. And I'll never forget, as a kid, I would ask him, like, why, you're always watching film? And he would talk about that. He's like, well, because when you watch film, he's like, man, you have a bird's eye view. You can see everything. And then he's like, also, you can take your time to look and see. Because in a game, he's like, it's so fast, and you can think this was it. He's like, but I want to see, what are we doing here? And he's like, I show it to my players so they can actually see themselves. Because I want them to see the good things they're doing, so they'll continue to add to that. I also want them to see their mistakes, so they can actually we can help them make changes in order for them not to make those mistakes, so they can have more of a, more productive game, and so on and so forth. So it's always just been a part of my life, of thinking about that. I love history. I've always studied history. History is the one thing for me that actually I paid attention to. As one thing I didn't have to study for, like in school, because it was like, I just loved it so much I could retain it. And so I think some of it's hardwiring. I think some of it is just being trained in the world that I was in.
Mm-hmm. So when you're watching something like basketball film, I mean, you have a pretty objective video that's playing in front of you. How do you do that with life? Yeah,
that's a great point. I think with the principles are still a little bit of the same, of that what you do is you're looking at it, let's say, let's just say you're looking at your life. And when, in a basketball film, you look at it and, okay, we're supposed to run this play. All right. Did we run this play? No. Okay. Why didn't we run this play? What was the breakdown? Did everybody do what they're supposed to do? Was everybody moving at the pace they needed to move at? You start looking at all those things. When you go back to life, you think about a situation. Let's say, oh, I'm in that relationship, right? What happened in that relationship? So you start kind of thinking through, like, good moments, bad moments, what happened? When did you start seeing it go sideways in that relationship? When all of a sudden did it go from, like, a honeymoon phase to, like, man, all we were doing now was, like, arguing all the time? In that moment, how were you feeling? Like, in that moment, was it something that was said consistently? And when that stuff that was said consistently by that person, what did it trigger in you? And then you take your time, you go deeper, because at first, like, oh yeah, he just was rude, or she was a jerk, or whatever. But then when you go underneath it, but why? Then you start just unpacking that. So it's kind of like a film. You see, okay, what made the end result turn into that, good or bad? And so you can just spend, just like watching film, you can spend hours watching film. But same thing, when you go and reflect, you can spend hours doing that. But the real key, I think personally, is that once you start learning how to do that, you can start doing it in real time. You don't have to, like, oh, let me now at the end of the year. Because that's what happens now. We go to the end of the year. It's like, all right, let me reflect on everything. I'm like, dude, that's a lot of moments that have happened over the last 365 days. But when you actually start to do this, that's why I think journaling and writing and all that stuff is really good, because in real time, you should sit there, okay, what happened today? And reflect. And then when you go back to start reviewing for your year, you can start seeing, I guarantee you start seeing patterns and things that are there.
I think one of the things that I learned, because you asked me the question about, I guess, when did I really start reflecting, and how did joining this culture kind of evolve that? One of the things that I learned here is one way to track how you evolved throughout the year, the things that you were thinking about or doing throughout the year, and truly do, I guess, the autopsy on those things, is to look back at the things that you created. So you talked about, like, writing, what are the things that you read, what are the things that you wrote, we might look at podcast episodes, and you can go back and have, like, really clear evidence that almost is like, acts like film, that you can go back and see who were you at that point in time, and what were the things that you were thinking about or wrestling with.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I do think, and I love how you put that, because a lot of times, for me, I'm like glass half empty, right? So, and being, like, a coach kid, being in that world, you're always looking at, like, what didn't I do right? So you're always looking at the situation that didn't turn out the way you wanted them to. But I think that's incredible. Like, but also, what was something really good? What did I create? Why did I create that? How did I feel when I created that? You start thinking about, like, man, I was thinking about this morning. I was like, I felt like my body has felt off a little bit. Been dealing with some difficult things the last, working through for the last, week or so. But instead of just saying, oh yeah, that's just a tough situation I'm dealing with, I was like, but what about that situation has made me this way, And it's like, oh, was I going back to something I shouldn't have gone back to versus this? So it's just all these thoughts are going in my head just about a situation that just happened. But I think when you create, it absolutely can help you. Like, just thinking about this year, I think working on something that really will be incredibly significant for the future of what we're doing and building, it has been incredible, because I found myself, when I'm in that moment, I know this is what we're supposed to do, because when I'm in that moment, it's just like this flow state where it's like I don't feel anything. I mean, I feel incredible as I'm working on, and some of the stuff is like deep dive stuff, and like into the muck and mire of like numbers. And I'm like I can't stand this stuff normally, but it's been like, no, this is amazing, because I believe it's that helped me realize, oh no, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do right now.
Lauren, do you have any questions?
Something that I've been thinking about recently is, as I'm trying to make decisions for my future and my near future, there's patterns of thought that I've noticed that are like, sometimes it's like, oh, I'm scared of this or nervous of this, that I wasn't scared or nervous of these things before. And so I've been like, where did I pick this up? Like, when did this happen? And I think some of it is like, I can think about certain people in my life now who I'm similar to, and so when they speak about something in their life that they have thought about and can articulate it clearly, I just kind of attach to it. And so something that I've been having a hard time with is figuring out, what do I actually think, and what has somebody who I trust and admire said that they think. And that's hard to discern, but also at the same time, is we are constantly being shaped by the things that are around us. And so I'm this is not so much a question maybe, but just like maybe it's a question, I don't know. I'm just having a hard time figuring out, what is me, what is someone else, and what is me because it was somebody else. Like, there's like three things there that I don't know how to separate these things.
Yeah, no, that's really good, because I mean, I think, first of all, you're doing the right thing, because of like, everything's layered. I think we live in a world that tries to make everything so just like, like one dimensional, just like very just flat. Versus like most situations are just like multi-layered. And if you don't learn how to like pull the layers out, it kind of reminds me when you're dealing with that, first time watching Iron Man. And when Tony Stark, he would go, so I think it was Iron Man 1, maybe 2 either. I think Iron Man 1, where he goes out there and then he has Jarvis, and he's like, he pulls it up and he throws it up on the, like, it's like this magic board. And he's like pulling stuff. Hey, I want this part. And he pulls it in. And he pulls it, and you're just seeing this whole thing in front of him. I feel like that's how like life and situations and us and everything is like that. It's so layered. And then you guys are like, okay, how do I, what's actually happening right here? And so I think that you're doing the right thing by looking at it that way, of saying, okay, here are these 3 different parts of it. What's me, what's not me, what's, the influence of other people, what's good about that, what's bad about that, or whatever. I think the first thing you have to say is like, man, because of that thought, has it helped you or not? You know what I'm saying? And because I know you said, oh man, like I got this fear. Well, some of that fear could become like now as you're getting older. Like before, when you're younger, like, there's just like, it's like the whole thing, ignorance is bliss, right? You're like, oh, it's all fine, whatever. Now you're like, oh, when you're in college, you're like, oh, I got, you're a freshman. Like, oh, I got my sophomore year. I got my junior. Then it's like you graduate, and next thing you know, once you graduate, you're like, oh, you weren't thinking about like job and healthcare and all that stuff. And now it's just like there's a new fear that gets unlocked because now you have to actually be responsible for it. So some of it could just be you're becoming more aware of just things in life that maybe you weren't aware of. I also think as well, yeah, you're right. Some people can have like, like they can say things that are more out of a place of fear. And I think you have to evaluate that. Some of it could just be a place of wisdom that's there. So I think that, it is multi-layered. And I just think you have to always go through and just sit there and ask yourself, okay, what about this? What about this? What about this? How does that hit me? Why did that happen? How am I feeling about this? What's next with this? And then just start putting pieces, see if you can see patterns, because that's the most important thing. I think patterns are one of the most important things to notice in your life.
How do you find time to do it?
No, that's great. I think that it definitely has to become a habit that you do. And one thing is honestly learning to actually sit in silence. I actually was writing this yesterday of just one of the most powerful things of helping become authentic. That's really helped me over the last probably couple years is just silence. Because when you learn how to eventually sit in silence, you learn how to empty your mind, then sometimes you can because our minds are always racing. There's 8 million, it's all I feel like there's 15,000 tabs open in my mind all the time. When you can begin to shut all those down and you can begin to learn how to control your mind to focus, you can take one situation. So it could be so sometimes for me, if I go to the sauna by myself, I'll sit in there. And I'll just be I'll put some type of meditation music or classical music or whatever, or sometimes nothing, and I just sit there and I'm able to clear my mind, and I may be thinking about, okay, what happened today? What happened about this situation? I'm thinking about this thing that I got to deal with. What's going on there? I think it's just become a habit. I also think, man, every day, I really do believe it's so important to be able to reflect, journal, write down, because that becomes a habit. Because now once you start doing that, I don't have that moment I can do it, but then you just start building the habit of actually thinking about that type of stuff. And today, we have so much, incredible things with artificial intelligence now to where you can actually, you can just talk to it and just go through it, and it can begin to track, and it can look at your journal, all the stuff like that. So, so I think that you just have to just start, but I think it starts with silence, because I believe silence allows you to close the tabs, and it allows you to begin to see a little bit clearer.
So what do you do after silence? Because when you say silence, I'm thinking that you're not thinking about anything.
Yeah, well, I think that's the first thing. You start with silence, where you try to empty your mind, which again is very difficult and it takes time to practice that. Once you learn how to do that, then what it is, when I say sit in silence, I'm going to reflect on this thing. So you, instead of thinking about one, you can now, in my mind, when it's quiet, think about that one situation instead of 15 situations. Mm-hmm. After that, what I would say is that, man, what are kind of the main themes? I always try to look at what are the main themes this situation pulled out, right? Dealing with a situation recently, and I was sitting this morning actually reflecting on it. And one of the things that's a constant theme for me that has been there that I was better at this time is when I get in situations where there's conflict, or I'm having to push things through, or I'm dealing with an employee, whatever, It's the fact that I naturally will start going through like, man, am I right or wrong? You know, because they may have pushback or they may have a situation, and you're like, man, okay, nah, you know, and I instantly go through, okay, why are they just not getting this from the jump? Okay, I must be wrong. And then I started thinking about, oh, in that, how am I wired? No, when I talk about things, I really talk at the basement of things. A lot of times people talk, they talk at the first and second layer. I talk at the basement, and I think that's a gift. And so I used to always like, then I would start stuttering through it or like being like, you know, second guessing myself. Instead of like when I was in it this time, I was like, no, I'm going to keep talking about this thing. No, I'm going to keep talking about this thing. And that helped me help people get some breakthrough and help them walk through something. But that was like actually me reflecting, but it was like practicing those things in real time. So I think that once you actually see the themes, then you got to say, okay, how do I actually apply that? Because once you have them, now you can be in a moment. And I was thinking, oh, I naturally go here. Let me make sure I stay and go this way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like whenever as an organization, we're looking back at something, it could be an event that we just did. It could be looking back across the year. There can be different people that look back at it and interpret it very different than other people within the room.
Yep.
And I think that can be true with just you as an individual, your life too. There's a lot of different perspectives. And how do you know what is the truest one?
That is a really good question. You know, it reminds me of that statement, you know, it's like hero villain. Like hero villain's all perspective. Because for some people, you're a hero. Some people, you're a villain. You know, you think about like Batman and Joker. You know, half of Gotham thinks that the Joker is the villain. Half of Gotham thinks Batman's the villain. And I do think it's perspective, but which one's actually what you're saying? Which one's actually true? I think the first thing you have to do is and this is what's really hard, you have to have a real keen awareness of what drives you and how we all have a perspective where we'll lean toward viewing the world, right? I lean at times to viewing the world glass half empty, okay? Others lean to glass half full. So if I know I lean that, it reminds me of what Dr. Zoda actually teaches, and this idea of like wisdom. You know, like wisdom is this middle of the road, and you have ditches on either side. I see the road, the ditch for me is I see the world as glass half empty. It's miserable, right? Like, and then there's the other side of the ditch, which is optimism, okay? And so for me, because I see this, you know, you think about a bike, and I used to have to ride a bike, and every now and then your bike gets out of alignment, so you have crooked handlebars, okay? And so you would have to so even though you were so straight, it wouldn't be straight. You know, if I had I have to turn it more left to make it actually go straight because of the way the handlebars are crooked. My handlebars lean more right. So in order for me to stay in the middle of the road, I've got to turn it more left. So I have to lean more toward optimism. I have to look at it through optimism, because if I don't, I will always see every situation that it's all worthless. It's not great. Other people on the other side of the situation see nothing but optimism. They won't ever see the problem. And so I think that's the first thing. You have to know which way you lean. And once you know which way you lean, okay, now trying to look at it from those sets of eyes. The other thing I would tell you in an organization, get someone who leans different than you and get their perspective. Because I think wisdom is found like in the council of people. And so, you know, because some people are going to have a different view than you did, but it's about people who actually and when I say that, make sure it's people who actually they really want to see the organization be great and move forward. Because a lot of times, you know, like if you go to somebody who's disgruntled within your organization, and again, when you work and you have a big enough organization, there's always going to be people who don't like what you're doing. But that's not the people you want to go through when you're reflecting, because they're going to think everything sucks. They're going to think it's all this and it all starts at the top or whatever. And there's some things you can learn from that. But I think get people who are critical, but they're actually trying to see the mission go forward. I think that's how you can then have wisdom to see where truth is in there.
Mm-hmm. So we started talking about how to maybe reflect situationally and learn how to do it on a more regular basis. And then when you look back at the year, we talked about one way to do that is looking at the things that you created, the things that you wrote.
Yeah.
When you are reflecting on your year, what exactly do you do and when do you do that?
Yeah, one thing I do is I have this strategic planning with, you're a part of that, my EA, Lavana, she's a part of that. And really what that is we do look at, okay, this past personally, organizationally, what went well, what didn't go well, whatever. And so I think that's a time that I actually really sit there and can look at that. What was good, what wasn't good. And so we try to carve out like multiple hours to actually do that. So think about when you do strategic planning for a company. You sometimes take a couple days to actually do that and plan. So if I see myself, and I think every human being should see themselves as a company, a brand, an organization. And if you do, then what's your strategic planning? What are you doing? And again, that's a very difficult thing for some people, but I do think that's really important, because if you're not planning, if you don't have an aim, a target, then you're just going to float, or life and situation is just going to carry you where it wants to carry you. And then you're going to sit there 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, like, man, how did I get here? And it was like, well, because you did not push in a direction. You just let the current of life take you wherever it wanted to take you. And so that is probably one of the most important practices I do in reflecting and preparing, because it allows me to have carved out time to really examine and to really look at practices, right? Like, what practices were I doing in this year that I needed? Did those practices work? But also, are those practices needed going into this next season? Like, for example, I have one practice of this, 1,000 creative hours, right? I got this from Jim Collins, the writer of Good to Great. He says every year he's trying to get 1,000 creative hours. 1,000 creative hours are not like your normal work, emails, just stuff you have to do. He's saying things where you're actually helping, where you're building something, you're creating something, you're something that is that's helping move a mission forward. And so I try to have over 1,000 creative hours. What's really interesting, and I track them. That so far this year, I mean, I probably have the most creative hours I've had. So I've been doing this like 4 years now, I think, and I've had the most creative hours by far that I've ever had. And it's interesting because I think I've probably this year created a couple things that will be so significant, and it took that time. And so that's a practice I think I'll have for a very long time. But there's other practices you may have right now, practices of like, man, for your working out or your things like that. And it's like, man, you did it for a year. Now you may need to switch that up. Maybe your connection point with your spouse. Man, you were doing a date night every week, but you're about to enter into another busy season. So, man, maybe that has to go to once a month. It's just looking at those things, reflecting what worked, what didn't work, but also being okay to making a change too. I think as humans, we just get to a point where like, we found it, just don't screw it up. This is the recipe, right? I did this, and this, and that year was great. Here's the thing. Life isn't like that. Life, all of a sudden, it's like everything gets thrown into the mix. So you have to just look at it. And it's not about the practice is important, but it's about the principle. Why did you do the practice? Because the way your practice, they can all shift and change. It's about the principle of why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we do for your strategic planning, and that I think is applicable whether you are someone who can sit in a room with a lot of people and look back at your year and plan your next year, whether you're sitting at a coffee shop doing that on your own. We look at all the different responsibilities and roles and arenas within your life. So maybe it's, I'm a board member on this many boards. I am the CEO of this many businesses. I am a husband and I am a father. And we look at all of those different arenas and we look back at the year and say, did I meet the expectations that I wanted to and needed to meet within all of these different roles, even within your hobbies? And then I think we look to the next year and say, okay, what's number one? What do we feel like is going to be priority? And that might be raising $5 million for Authentica. And if that's the case, then we'll look at all of the other arenas of your life and we start to adjust them accordingly. So that way you walk into the year having a really strong understanding of what's the scoreboard and what does it mean to win? And also, what did I say the scoreboard was last year and did I actually fulfill that? And what changed along the way? No,
you're absolutely right. And you've been incredibly helpful for me in that, because it's the idea of signal versus noise, right? You have so much noise. But signal is the main things, the 3 to 4 to 5 things that help push the mission forward. And so every year, going into it, man, these are key signal things that we're looking at. And then everything else has to morph around that, because you can't do, and again, this is important because you can't do everything.
I was going to say, how do you have the courage to cut stuff?
No, listen, and you know this about me. It is so difficult for me because it's not, my mentor once told me, he was like, if I were the devil, he's like, the way that I would destroy your life is not, he's like, it's not money. He's like, it's not money. It's not fame. It's not women. It's not anything. He's like, it's opportunity. He was like, because I think you struggle to say no. And it's so true. It's like opportunity is always there. And now what I'm learning, here's what I'll say. It's always been a difficult thing. I don't think I do it great yet. But why I do think I'm getting better is because I think I have a clear understanding of what the next season looks like and what I'm supposed to build. And that's become it's become like literally an obsession to me. Of building this. And so for me, I'm like, no, anything that gets in the way of this, no. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to go forward and build with this, and so I think that's where, like, you got to just go and you got to make the tough call. And you know what? Sometimes you're going to make a call that you cut something out and you're like, man, I probably shouldn't have done that. And that's okay. It's okay. Like, you're not going to get this perfect, but it's about you just starting and going. And that's what you want to look at. You cannot look at when you're looking, reflecting, preparing for the next upcoming year, whatever. You can't try to say, man, I'm about to get an A+, bad 1,000. Like, no. Like, you're going to, you haven't done anything. You know what I'm saying? So it's like learning a new subject. Like, so, man, you know what? In the year you make grade yourself, man, I think I got a C. That's great. Because you didn't have a great last year. You know what I'm saying? So you do it. I also want to say this, man. Look, in today's world with artificial intelligence, you don't need people in the room if you don't have that. It's great. I love having people in the room, And so I would tell you, man, if you got some friends, all y'all get together. I mean, well, how do I do that? Just literally go to Chat, GPT, go to Gemini, go to Claude, whatever. Say, hey, I'm doing strategic planning with my friends. Blah, 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 blah. This is what we're doing. This is our ages, where you give us a list of questions and things so we can talk through in order to plan out this upcoming year for our own personal strategic plan. Can you give us a whole roadmap? Can you give us templates? Whatever. Yeah, it'll spit the world's best at this. It'll all spit it out for you. And so I would tell you, you can do that. Say you don't have that, then just ask it to do strategic planning with you. Ask me these questions. Do this. Think of yourself as a person, the high level, write in your chat. See yourself as a high level, personal development coach or life coach, whatever. And I'm trying to do da-da-da. And just let it. And then I think you can just start and just start there. And I think that, and again, I would say the simple, the better. Yeah. You can add more complexity to it as you get better at it.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, I hope today was helpful for you. Reflection is an incredible part of life. I think that reflection actually brings gratitude. I think reflection actually can bring correction in your life. I think reflection can actually just multiply your skills and your gifts. And I think reflection actually helps us have a better future. And so I want to encourage you that maybe the most practical step for you is just, hey, for this week, that you would just take at the end of your day, or maybe the next morning you wake up before you do anything, you reflect on your previous day, or you reflect on, if it's at night, the day you just had, and just try to say, man, what was good? What was bad? What went on? How did I feel that day? And start building the habit of reflection, because I do believe reflection helps us have a better future. Until next time, keep writing new rules.